Hey everyone, my name is Johnny and I play drums in a retro-inspired rock and roll band from Toronto called the Dreamboat. And today I thought I would just share a story of my first experience playing in the big city of Toronto at a club. And I'd love to hear your experiences as well. Please comment below because I think everyone has an interesting story of their first kind of official show in Toronto. So my show took place at Club Rockit in Toronto, which no longer exists. I think they closed down in 2005. And it was with my kind of first official band called the Steady Rollers. And we were a blues, rock, 70s influenced band. Think Allman Brothers, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix. And I always say if we had continued the band, we seriously would have become the Sheepdogs. So that's the sound we were kind of going for. I was 17 and I remember my bandmates told me that they got this big show in Toronto. This is around 2004 or 2005, I believe. Our first club show. And so we were all kind of excited about that. And I remembered I had other friends in bands at high school who were always selling tickets for their shows. I never knew. I just thought that if you were selling tickets on your own, you were playing shows and that was a cool thing. So we got these tickets. I wasn't really involved in the dealings. It was kind of two of the other guys in the band. Yeah, so I got these tickets that I had to sell. And I remember I would be selling them and people would ask me, oh, what time are you guys playing or whatever? And I'd be like, I don't know. And I actually didn't know. So obviously the tickets were being sold through Supernova. And for anyone who lived in Toronto or the greater Toronto area, usually the suburbs, I'm from Mississauga, you know about Supernova. They were kind of notorious, I guess I'll say, because they would host shows and they would have maybe 10 to 12 bands on a bill. Short sets, and it would be a mishmash of genres, and every band would have to sell tickets, and the band with the most tickets would get kind of a prime slot, and you wouldn't get any of the ticket money. It was just the first place band would get a prize and people would have to vote. It was kind of a controversial system, but to be honest, I'm just gonna go out and say it. I know Supernova gets a bad rap for their style. They never really paid the artists, and I get that, but for a lot of young bands, I think it was a great first step to getting on stages in Toronto and to playing on some legitimate stages and adding to the resume. And I also feel like it was a bit of an introduction to the music business, because at some point you realize you're selling all these tickets and then at the end, right before your show, you're giving the money to Supernova, to the rep, and you're getting nothing in return, potentially some recording time. So it's kind of, after a certain point you realize, this isn't right. I think it's like kind of beating the first boss in the music industry. You got to get past that, and then you realize what you're worth and what you can sell. So that's my side note on Supernova. So we had to sell these tickets. I didn't know what time our set was going to be, and because we only sold about 15 to our friends, because we were all underage, I was 17 at the time, we ended up getting a 5 p.m. slot, and we didn't really know how this whole thing worked. So 5 p.m. slot at Club Rockit in Toronto. I remember pulling up to Club Rockit, and it was this building. I remember we parked to the side of it in the parking lot, and I remember some of our friends had showed up early, and we were just like, you're too early, we got to do the sound check. I believe we were the first band of the day, and by day I mean, we were there at like 3:30 or 4, and I believe our set was at 5. It was still light out, so it was kind of the worst time slot. Anyone who wanted to get off work or kids coming out of school, I guess our high school friends, it was okay. They trekked down and took the subway. I remember walking in, I vaguely remember, so anyone who actually spent a lot of time at Club Rockit, please comment and let me know what your experience was. But I remember kind of walking in, there were these stairs and you go up, and as soon as we got into this venue, I remember thinking like, whoa, this is the big time. And even though it was, a bit of a grimy venue, there was this nice brick wall, and it looked like a classic cliche kind of venue, something like out of School of Rock in the final scene when they're doing the Battle of the Bands competition. I remember there was a balcony at the top which I thought was really cool. And I'm like, oh, this place is going to be packed. This is going to be amazing. Like, we're playing here right now. Because we were the first band on the bill, which had like a million bands, we were doing the sound check first. And thankfully there was all backline provided, so it was a pretty easy load. And we did the sound check, and I remember when we were sound checking, there's a really cool sound guy, and for the life of me, I don't remember his name. And hopefully someone might be able to describe him. He was really cool. And because we were so young, 17, and the other guys were 18, and we were playing the 70s influence kind of rock and roll, the sound guy actually really dug what we were doing, and he recorded our sound check a little bit on tape, and he played it back, and he said, dig your sound, guys, you know, like, so awesome. He's like, I'll tape the set for you. And we're like, okay, great. So 5 o'clock rolls around, and our 15 fans show up, and so it's pretty dead in there, you know, but we were a little maybe disappointed, being like, oh, we're on, you know, so early, and I guess no one's really here, but let's rock it. No pun intended. I remember we didn't even have that many songs. I feel like we maybe had 5 songs, 6 songs, and you know, we were a little rusty. But it was so cool that they gave us a show without really hearing anything. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but you know, it was cool for us. I remember we played a pretty short set. Like, it couldn't have been longer than 25 minutes or half an hour. So we played to, you know, the 15 of our fans, and whoever else was kind of trickling in. The next band, you know, was probably loading their gear in on the side, and the judges, wherever they were, if they were even there. So we played the set, and I remember right after the set, the sound guy came up to us and said, here you go, guys. And he gave us a cassette, yes, a cassette of our set. And I have it to this day. And I listen back, and I'm like, wow, what a mess that was. I actually have one of the tracks here. Well, let's give it a listen. Tell what our influences were at the time. I actually haven't listened to this in a while, and I realized how seriously rough it was. But it was so cool, that sound guy, to have recorded the set for us. So I have that memory of this first show at Club Rockit. And yeah, it was pretty rough. So after the set, you know, we were feeling on top of the world. We didn't know how everything worked through Supernova. So because we were on so early at 5, I think it was on a Friday or Saturday, we stayed for all the bands so that at the end we can hear who won this Battle of the Bands. I forgot to mention this was a Battle of the Bands. So we literally stuck around from 5 till the end of the show, watching band after band, and you would get a punk band, you'd get like an emo band, you'd get a metal band, you'd get a ska band. It was just like all of the flavors of the suburbs were coming together at this show, and it was really cool. We made a lot of friends, and we felt like we were kind of part of a scene. I remember at the end of the night, we were waiting, and the final band played, and right after the band finished, one of the Supernova reps just started tearing down all the gear. We're like, hey, are you going to announce the winner? And he's like, oh, no, we don't do that. It's done online. You got to do the voting online, and then we announce the winner. We're like, oh, okay. So we didn't find out. And then we realized that through Supernova, later after the show, everyone goes online and votes. And it's usually a popularity contest, you know, however many friends or people you could get to vote on Supernova on your page, you would win, and you would win some recording time. We didn't win, unfortunately, that night, but it was kind of the start of us feeling comfortable on stage. And once again, if it wasn't for Supernova, I think we wouldn't have realized how to book a show, even though it was, through ticket sales and all of that, and not getting the money. Once again, being a young band from the suburbs and not knowing anything about booking and being 17 to 18 years old, it was an easy way for bands to play on the stage. So for that, I'm going to say Supernova, thank you. And also, thanks, because we ended up learning how bands actually get booked and make money in the scene outside of the Battle of the Bands. It just really taught us how to grow and kind of recognize what that was all about, and to, take it to the next level and get booked by local promoters. So it was a really cool experience. It's a shame in later years I went by Club Rockit. I remember I was with someone, I'm like, this is where I played my first show in Toronto, and it was no longer a venue. I believe it closed down in 2005, and now it is, or last time I heard, it was a bit of an adult entertainment spot of a particular style, you could say, which is cool. I'm glad the building is still being used. So it's great, but I have such an awesome memory, and it's such a shame that Club Rockit closed down, because it had a really nice setup. It was intimate, yet it had this vibe of a club, It had like a stage and stage lights, and it felt cool. I remember just a bit of a haze that filled the room. It felt legitimate, and that's all you can ask for, I think, for a first club show in Toronto. So please comment below. I'd love to hear your stories of your first shows in Toronto and what that was like, and where you played, and if the venue even exists anymore. Also, if you've done any shows with Supernova, which I know you have out there. Thank you so much for listening to the story. I hope you got something out of it, or could maybe relate to it in some way. And I'll be doing a few more stories in the coming next little bit. So once again, thank you so much, and see you soon.